getting started with Rocrail. We'll start off with, right, so last time we started with this track plan, set that up and got it all working. So this time we're going to develop things from there. First of all, last time I should have concluded with a piece on Loco direction problem solving. If you get started with Rocrail, you will almost certainly run into problems where you put the Loco on the track and it either doesn't go at all or it goes the wrong way. It can be incredibly frustrating and difficult to sort out. And in the first couple of years of Rocrail, I actually abandoned a couple of fairly well advanced track plans because I just could not get over this problem. There's an easy solution and we'll go through that. So we'll cover that off first. Last week there were several questions at the end. My explanations were very brief and one wasn't totally correct. So what I'm going to do in the section that follows, which is detection of loose wagons on points, go into that in a bit more detail, and we'll cover off those questions in a bit more detail, looking at backup and recovery of projects, which is important, otherwise you risk losing all the work you've put into your Rocrail. Explore how I explore some of the options. As I said, I use trial and error. Well, a bit more about how I actually do that. And then when things do go wrong, which they will, another way of finding out what's gone wrong using something called trace files. And then if time permits at the end of that, I can show you a short video of random mode running on my London transport layout. That's only a 5-minute video and maybe 5 minutes of explanation. And also got some automatic uncoupling. Again, that's a 10-minute video and 10-minute explanation if there's time. So we'll move on to Loco direction problem solving. And we're going to start off with a video. So here we go. The first thing we need to do with Rocrail, if we're going to try and do problem solving, is to set up what they call the trace system. Rocrail records things in the background that it's doing, but you need to make sure that you've got the right pieces of trace information set up. So here I've gone on to File and Rocrail Trace, and you need to have these 4 items checked. Information just gives you general background information. Automatic records everything that Rocrail is trying to do in the automatic mode. Monitor puts on the screen at the bottom right-hand controller window everything that is sent between the computer and the layout. So all the C-bus instructions, all the Loco instructions, they all appear on screen. And the router shows information on what Rocrail is doing with the routes. So they're the 5 things we need to, the 4 things we need to make sure we've got set up or checked. You can try and check them here, but if one's not there, for example, when you click on it to change it, that all disappears. So an easier way to do it is to click on Trace, and you can then change things until you've got exactly what you want. And when we've got those 4 set, click on OK. So that's the background work done. We're ready to start. So it's now got the correct 4 items checked. So that will give us the information in the windows at the bottom. Now, last time we put the Loco in block 1 and that worked fine. This time we're going to put it in block 3 and see what happens. So the Loco's in block 3. I'll put it on the track in block 3. Loco's pointing the same way as it was last time, so heading to the front of the Loco's pointing towards the right. We've got automatic mode on. We then click and drag the Loco from block 3 to block 1. Nothing happens. But in the bottom window on the screen there's some red writing appeared. So we'll look at that in more detail. So down in the bottom corner there, it says no destination found for the Loco from block 3. and it says check previous trace lines. Well, we won't go into trace lines yet, but we will look at the next line in that box, which says check placing or block enter side. And with Rocrail Loco direction, there are 3 things in play, and if any one of those is not correct, then it won't work. So those 3 things are, in the pink box where the Loco is at the moment, the D3712, there's a black arrow. That is the block, sometimes called the block enter side arrow, sometimes called the block exit side arrow, depending on where you look on the program and in the instructions. But that can either point to the right, so in this case, Rocrail is expecting the Loco to go off to the right, and it can't because there's no track there. It should be pointing to the left, but we'll come back to that in a minute. Second item is on the throttle window towards the bottom left-hand side of the screen. You've got the slider there for adjusting the speed. There's a stop button, and just above the stop button, there's a direction button. That's got 2 little arrows on it. At the moment, that's pointing to the right. If we were driving the Loco manually from that throttle, it would go forwards if the arrow is pointing to the right. If you click on the arrow, it would change and point to the left, and the Loco would go backwards. In automatic mode, Rocrail always expects that arrow to be pointing to the right. If it's pointing to the left, it gets confused. So that always needs to be pointing to the right. The third thing, if we look in the locomotive window, top left of the screen, there's a grey bar there with the 3712 in it. And in the column marked V, that's the velocity column. At the moment, it says 0% because the Loco isn't moving. And there's a little arrow to the right there. That arrow mimics the arrow that's in the throttle window at the bottom. So if we were to change the throttle to backwards or reverse, so the arrows point to the left in the throttle window, the little arrow in the grey window would move to the left-hand side of the screen and point to the left. But Rocrail doesn't use that in automatic. It always expects that arrow to be pointing to the right. So the third thing is, and this is where it gets very confusing, if Rocrail wants the Loco to go the other way, it does something which it calls swap placing or swap logical direction. And when it does that, it puts a little tiny minus sign in front of the 0%. And that indicates that it's going to go the opposite way to what the throttle is showing. Now that's fine, we've got 0% up there, and if you'll see this in a minute, you'll get a little minus sign come up there and it'll all sort itself out. Problem is, if that speed goes up to 50% or 80%, the window isn't wide enough to show the minus sign. So it just shows 50% or 80%, and you don't really know which way it's going anyway. So the whole thing can be totally confusing. But there is a very simple solution to all of this. In the Rocrail manual, there is a page of instructions on avoiding problems with unwanted direction of travel. And what we're going to do is work through that and resolve the problem in one go. It works every single time, no problem at all. So the first line of that number 1 says, determine in which direction the train should start from the block. And on our layout, we want the train to go to the left of the block. Second one says, make sure there is a valid route to the next block in that direction. But we're using the same layout as we had in part 1, and we know there's a valid block because the train's run both ways before. So now we select the Loco in the Loco control panel. So that's the grey bar at the top of the screen. You just click on that to make sure that that Loco is selected in the throttle. Then in the throttle window, make sure the direction is set to forwards, which is the 2 arrows pointing to the right, which is shown in the diagram there. And again, that also shows the red arrow, shows that there's a little mimic arrow in the velocity box. And then you manually drive the Loco a short distance from the throttle. So we're going to move the throttle controller and see which way the loco goes. And then number 6 says, is it going in the right direction? And if it is, then you go on to point 7. If it isn't, then it tells you to click on the locomotive context, that's the grey line, and it says swap logical direction. We're going to do that, so you'll see what happens in a minute. But these instructions, when you look at them on the Rocrail screen, it doesn't say swap logical direction, it says swap placing. But swap placing and swap logical direction are exactly the same thing. It's just where the various bits of Rocrail have been updated, but they've not always updated all the text. And then the final one says about swapping block enter side, but we'll see what happens there in a minute. So now we go on to the actual, so there's the arrow pointing the right way, that arrow is pointing the right way. So what we're going to do is run the loco by clicking on forwards and then stop. That's what we're actually going to do on screen. So you'll now see this actually in practice. So I'm now clicking to make the loco run forwards and it's going the wrong way. So I've stopped it again. So we get down as far as number 6 on the screen, and it says if it goes the wrong way, swap logical direction, which I've just done. And what you'll see is the block arrow has swapped from the right hand side to the left hand side, so that arrow is now pointing the right way. The throttle arrow down in the bottom left hand corner above the stop is still pointing to the right, but the little tiny minus sign has appeared in front of the 0, and that's Rocrail telling the loco it's got to go the other way. So if I now click and drag the loco from block 3 to block 1, the points change and it works. So by working through that single set of instructions, if your loco won't go, follow those carefully and it will work every time. There is a temptation, and I used to do this a lot initially, to think, oh, I'll try swapping the block enter side, or I'll swap the placing. Or even, one of the worst things you can do is actually click on the throttle arrow and send that the other way, because that will reverse the loco for this one move, but Rocrail doesn't know that and it gets totally confused. So just remember, look at those instructions if you have a problem, and that will resolve. So now we'll move on to detecting loose stock on points. This was something that was queried last time, and I said, yes, it works. You just create a block for the points and it will always detect there's something left on the points. So what we've done here is added a sensor to the feed to the points. So if a loco is on the points, or if a wagon is left on the points, it will draw a current through the sensor and Rocrail will know that there's something there. The question was also asked, well, what if it stops on the frog? So if we have a wagon with only one resistive axle and it happens to stop with that resistive axle on the frog, it will still draw a current through the micro switch or relay or whatever from the DCC through the sensor. So Rocrail still knows that there's something on the points, so it will detect if there's something on the points. If the points are thrown the other way, down the bottom here, the wheel set is now on the block, on the frog still. Sorry, I've clicked when I shouldn't have done. Right, back to that one. The axle is now on the frog still, but it's on the common side of the frog, which is connected down to the common rail. But the other wheel is still on the stock rail, which is connected to the sensor. So the wheel set is still drawing a current through the sensor. Sorry, yep, the wheel set is drawing a current through the sensor, through the stock rail, down to the frog and down to common. So Rocrail still knows that there is a loco or a wagon on those points. What we must avoid doing is this: if there happens to be a baseboard cross member underneath the points and you've forgotten to put holes in it for the wires, and maybe you're using a relay or a frog juicer and there's a convenient dropper on this piece of track here, you could connect that to the micro switch or the relay, and it still gives the frog the correct polarity. So the train would still run, it would still work, but now if something stops on the frog, the feed is actually coming from up here in block 1, sensor 1. So Rocrail thinks the wagon's in block 1, not on the points, so it won't detect it as being on the points. Worse still, if we're sending a train from block 3 to block 2, Rocrail expects to see the train first in block 3, then in the points block, and then in block 2. But when it crosses the frog, it gets detected in block 1, and it isn't in block 1, it's on the frog. So Rocrail thinks there's now a loco in, or a train in block 1 where there shouldn't be. It's got a problem, so it flags up an error and switches the power off. So just make sure you get the wiring correct and it will all work okay. So you will then get detection of the wagons and locos on the points. So what I'm going to do now is add that to our original Rocrail track plan. In doing that, we'll look at creating and restoring a backup. What you don't want to do is lose all the work you've put into your plan. So how to restore that if something goes wrong. Look at modifying an existing track plan. A closer look at some of the options. I said about trial and error, explain a bit about what I mean by that. Updating the routes, how we go about that. And then what happens if a wagon is left on the point. Have a look at what actually happens. And this is where I made a minor error in my description last time. And then if something doesn't work, how to diagnose problems. So we're now going to go to a live Rocrail screen. And last time we used a file which was called merg demo 1. So I'll find that on here, merg demo 1, select folder. So that's what we started or we ended up with last time. So I could go straight into this and start modifying merg demo 1. But first of all, a bit about what Rocrail does with the files and how it does backups. When you start a session, as we've done here, the layout that is currently on screen now becomes the backup. And if we now close Rocrail, the version that we close with becomes the new plan file. If we make a mistake, we make a complete hash of doing our modification, so we know we've done it wrong, and we don't really want to save this version, we want to exit without saving. There is no option in Rocrail to do that. If you've made a complete mess of it, when you close Rocrail, whatever method you use to close it, that complete mess gets saved as the current plan. And we don't want to do that, but we've got no option. So I'm going to close Rocrail and then show you how to, actually before I close it, I'll make a complete mess of it. So we've messed up our track plan, and that is what Rocrail is going to save. So I'll just click on close, and whichever method you use of closing, I'm going to click the red arrow at the top, the red box at the top there. It's just going to shut down the Rocrail server too. It always says this, whichever method you choose. So we've now lost what was a good plan to start with. So to recover a backup, we go into the File Manager, Documents, find the Rocrail folder, and then find our Merg Demo 1 layout, which is here. Click on that folder, and in the folder there is a plan XML. That's the one that we've just saved. It's got a date and a timestamp on it, 11/23, and it's got a backup, and that's the one we started with, and that plan was produced yesterday at 16:02. So that's the one we now want to pick up. So all we do is right mouse click on the plan that's no good, the one we've just messed up, and delete it. Are you sure you want to delete this? Yes. And then on the backup one, we click on that and just remove the back. Yes, it's telling me I'm going to change the file extension. I'm not actually, I'm just taking the back off the end of it. So that is now plan XML. And if I open Rocrail again, and find Merg Demo 1, we've got the good version back. So we've recovered our good version of the file. What happens sometimes is you don't actually know that you've made a mistake when you've been working on the file, and you close it thinking it's all fine, and then next time you open it up, it doesn't work, it's all gone wrong, and you can't find out what the problem was. And this is what used to happen to me. So you've lost all your work. So what you can then do, we'll just come out of Rocrail again. Go into your Rocrail folder, and we're in Merg Demo 1 again, and there's a backup folder. And in here, Rocrail's kept a backup of every single version of this plan that you've ever made. So you can work back to one that you know works. So we'll just pick one at random there, copy that, paste it into the ordinary Merg Demo 1 folder, and plan XML is the one that's going to be corrupt, so we don't want that. So we would delete that, and then this one here, we would just remove the timestamp on it and save that as plan XML, and we're back to a known working version. So that's another way of recovering the work that you've lost. What I'm now going to do is actually make some fairly significant changes to Merg Demo 1, and they could go wrong. So rather than risk corrupting Merg Demo 1, whenever I'm going to make a major change to a project, I actually create a new folder. So what I do is on Merg Demo 1, I'm going to click on that, right mouse click, copy, and then over here, make sure you're on a white background, right mouse click, paste. So we've now got a Merg Demo 1, and we've got a Merg Demo 1 copy. And I'm just clicking on this, and I'm going to rename that Add Points Block. So that's the plan that I'm going to make into an Add Points block. So I'm now going to start Rocrail again, open folder, open workspace. We did use Merg Demo 1. I'm now going to use Add Points Block. and select folder. And it comes up exactly the same as Merg Demo 1 because it's a complete copy of that, but I actually want to modify it. So we want to add a sensor and a block to this plan. So I'll go into Track Plan, Edit Panel. Before I can put some new bits in, I need to move some of these over a bit to make space. So I'm going to grab this and slide it across. Move it to about there. Move the sensor with it. I'm going to move the points over one, just so that it makes the points sensor and block completely clear of the existing blocks. So now I need to add a sensor. So click on Sensor, drag that up there. Ideally, I'd like to put a sensor actually on the points, but there's no option for that. So I'll put it next to the points. And I need to add a block to put in here. So we go on block. Now the standard block, if I try and get that in there, it won't fit. But down here, there's a smaller block. So maybe I'll try that. What you can do, if you're not sure about anything, is drag it onto the screen, right mouse click on it, look at properties, and the properties show that it's pretty well the same as the other blocks that we had. But what I noticed here is it's got small symbol ticked. Now, if I uncheck small symbol and click apply, it becomes the same as the other standard blocks. So it is in fact a standard block, but it just has a small symbol. So we'll move that into place. Oh, sorry, let's clear that. Move that into place. Just need to fill in the gaps in the track now. So drag that one to there. Rocrail remembers what I've put in, so I just click in the next square and click in the next square. So that's my track plan updated. I've finished editing, so I can go back to operate. Now I just need to configure this block, the new block. So right mouse click, properties, and we'll call the block points. Then over this side, at the moment, if a train goes onto the points and the block is set to wait, it will actually stop on the points, and we don't really want that. So I'm going to uncheck wait. We need the small symbol. It's not a terminal station, so we don't need to change any of these. We're not using this BBT function at the moment, so we can uncheck that. So that is that page set up. If we look on the details page, because we've unchecked wait, Rocrail has automatically clicked the no wait button there. So the times in here are irrelevant. It's not going to stop. And now we need to look at the routes. So we've only got one sensor, but the trains are going to be going through in both directions. So we need to use that sensor for both routes. So for all trains entering on the plus side, all enter plus, we need to select our sensor. I haven't even bothered renaming it. We'll use it as is. It's called FB1. The event we use the same as before, enter to in. And the event timer, I'll put 3 seconds in, even though we're not going to have trains stopping there. Gives you an idea of what's going on. You see the block changing colour as the train passes through. So that's the plus side done. We'll do the minus side. All trains entering from the minus side. Again, the sensor is FB1. So sensors coming from minus side, FB1, event, enter to in, and the timer is the same for that. It's a global timer for all directions. So we'll apply that. So it's changed to points. So we now have our route set up and we're ready to start running. So we turn the power on, turn automatic on. Just before I do that, there's one thing I need to check. Sorry about this. And it's oh dear. Does anyone know how I can get rid of the panel at the top of the screen? Because it's hiding what I want to click on. Oh, actually, I've done it. I've moved Rocrail down. That's okay. Forget that. On the view menu, there's a thing down here called show locked switches. I'll do that again. Show locked switches. Click on that so that it is highlighted. So we've got show lock switches is ticked. That's very useful for when we're running in automatic. Let's move that back up to there. So I'm going to start the Loco off from block 1, drag it to block 3. Sorry, I can now see that I've missed another step. This is the problem of doing things live. So I'm going to recover. It's actually started running the Loco and I don't want it there. So I'm going to soft reset the Loco auto mode, and that's brought us back to there. What I didn't do was change the routes. So if I go into tables and routes, at the moment, the only routes that are set up go from block 1 to block 3, block 3 to block 2. There's no points on there at all. And they need to be included in the route, otherwise it's not going to work properly. So we need to delete these 4 routes and add new ones. That's very easy to do. And I'll make another error on purpose here, and you'll see the sort of things that happen. So all I do is go on File, Router, and Routing, and Rocrail should delete all the routes and make new ones. But there's a message come up in the server window down here telling me that I've made a mistake. It's in red. The router skipped the job it was supposed to do. It says track power is on. Switch off to use routing. So if I switch off track power, and if you get a lot of stuff in these panels, it can be difficult to see new messages. So you can either click on View. It's hidden, sorry, it's underneath something else on my screen. Click on View and Clear Messages, or you press Alt-K. But I'll click on that, Clear Messages, so that's cleared those screens. So now we've got the power turned off. Going to go on File, Router, Routing, and Rocrail has done all of this lot here. It's cleaned out all of the old routes and created new routes. And if I now go on Tables and Routes, we now have 6 routes, and they go from the points to block 1 and the block 1 to points. So all those routes are now correct. Also last time, we went into individual routes and unchecked reduce speed for thrown switches. There is an easier way of doing that as well. If we go into File and Rocrail Properties and Automatic, there's a thing here, no speed change for switches. And if we click that, that is a global thing, and that saves having to click on individual switches if you don't want any speed changes on any of the switches. So we'll click on OK. Sometimes that doesn't take effect until after you've shut down and restarted, but we'll see what happens this time. So we're back to getting started. So that we can see what's going on down here, I'm going to use Alt+K to clear that screen. So now we've got clean windows, so if Rocrail puts up any messages, we'll see what's going on. So again, I'm going to click and drag from block 1 to block 3. Several things have happened here. The points have been thrown. The points background has gone pink. That's because Rocrail is showing locked switches. So if I try and click on that switch to change it, normally if you click on it, it will change manually. But I've clicked on it, nothing's happened. Over here in the server window, it's telling me switches locked by Loco D3712, reject any commands from others. So Rocrail has locked that set of points. We set the global no speed change for switches, but it hasn't actually taken effect because we haven't shut down and restarted. So at the moment, Rocrail is showing a speed of 50%. Normal speed is 80%. It's got 50% there and there. So the Loco's headed for the points at 50%. When it gets to the points sensor is activated. There's a 3-second delay on the in setting for there. The sensor, the Loco is now in the points block, but it's changed the speed now to 80%, which may not be ideal, but that's what it's done. But it's showing 80%. So it carries on here through the points. Oh, by the way, just before it carries on, it's unchecked, or it's cleared the pink background. So now, even though the Loco could be on the points, if I was silly enough, I can click on them and change them, which isn't really ideal. And we'll get back to that in a minute. So the Loco carries on. It arrives in this block after 3 seconds, and it removes the Loco from the points block. So the Loco is now in block 3. Rocrail has automatically changed the placing and the Loco direction, so it's automatically put the little tiny minus sign up here. So when it starts again, the Loco is going to head in the correct direction away from there. So we're now ready to move the Loco out of block 3, and we'll drag it to, before I do that, I'll just clear this window again because there's some more messages going to come up. Alt K. So we drag the Loco from block 3 to block 2. Nothing happens. Up here, it's telling it to wait, and it's got a 5-second wait in that block. And every 5 seconds, it flashes to auto and then goes back to wait again. So it's trying to do something, but it's not working. So there's nothing come up in the window. So how do we find out what's going on? Well, at the top of the screen, there are several different icons. This one here is called Trace. It looks like a page out of a book. If we click on that, we get pages and pages and pages of information. This is all what's going on in the background. And the pages are different colours depending on what Rocrail thinks and what it's doing. Now, some of the colours are red. We don't have any red ones here. They're all green. Green doesn't mean it's okay. Green means it's generated by the automatic system. So somewhere in here, we'll find there's a problem. If you click on this soon after having the problem should be somewhere near the bottom of the page. And because I've done this before, I know what I'm looking for. When you're first starting, it can be very difficult. So we'll start off, I'm just going to highlight this so you can see what I'm looking at. It's changing the state of the Loco from idle to find a destination in that line. This is the automatic system working. It's currently in block 3. It's using the block enter side. It's trying to find a destination for block 3. The points are not locked, so it can set the points. The route is from block 3. It's evaluating the route. The event will take it to block to the points. But then when it gets to this line, and this is the problem, it says points is electrically occupied by sensor FB1. So it can see that that sensor is occupied and it won't start the train. So even though I can change the points, Rocrail knows that there's something on the points because the sensor is occupied and it won't start the train. If I now remove the wagon from the points and I'll just clear the sensor, Rocrail will wait for the 5-second delay, and it's now seen the points are clear, so it's started the train off. Here it is, it's doing 80%. It should say minus 80% up in this box because it's got the little minus there, but the box isn't wide enough. I actually know that, and I can drag that across, and now you can see the minus 80, but often that won't appear, so it can get quite confusing. So the Loco's arrived on the, so at the moment, even though the Loco's running, I can still manually change these points, which isn't good. It's now arrived on the points block, and it's finding the next block, which is block 2. It's locked the points, arrives in the next block, frees that one, and it's now changed the direction again, so it's ready to go forwards. So this system of putting the points in a block, it works, but it's not totally ideal because you can still manually change the points when there's a wagon on there. So we'll close this one down, and then we'll have a look at an easier and quicker way of doing it that works better, which I discovered by trial and error by playing around with this, because I didn't realise that I would still be able to change the points. So we'll close that one down. I'd actually done this before, and I want to recreate this one. This is a completed one. I'm just going to delete the add sensor. I'm going to make a copy of my demo again. So there's my Merg demo. There's the copy I've just made. I'm going to call this one Add Points Sensor. We'll go on to Rocrail again. Open workspace. Merg demo 1, add points sensor. Open that. And we're back to our original plan, so we haven't lost anything. We can start all over again, but it'll be very quick this time. I found a much better way of doing this. So I'll go on track plan, edit panel, and all we need to do is to add a sensor to the points. We don't need to change anything else. Now, ideally, I'd like to put a sensor on the points. I can't. I had a look at this one. What does this do? So I dragged that onto the screen. So that's my new point sensor. And when I looked at the properties, it looked the same as all the other sensors, but this accessory number here was accessory 4. I thought, well, what is that? So I tried changing it to a 0, which is the accessory number for the other sensor. And when I click on apply, it changes to that sensor. Or if we make it accessory 1, it changes to some weird sensor. All it's doing actually, we'll go back to 4, which is the one we want. All it's doing is changing the graphic image. All the sensors work in exactly the same way. So that's our new sensor FB1. We'll leave that there, click on OK. Now all we need to do is attach that sensor to the points. And this is something that I learned in the last 2 weeks as well, fiddling around by trial and error. So we'll go on to right mouse click on the points and properties. And I found something on the wiring tab that I'd not noticed before. It's got occupancy. And so I clicked on that and it's got a list of sensors. So we click on FB1 on occupancy and OK. And that has now tied that sensor to the points. So at the moment, I've just turned the power on. At the moment, I'm in edit panel and I should be in operate panel. I often do that. So at the moment, I can click on those points and I can change them. If that sensor is occupied, if I click on the points now, it generates an error over here. Switch P1 is locked from reject any command from others. That's because this sensor is occupied. So if we just attach a sensor to the points and don't put a block on there, it works in exactly the same way. So now if we try and run our Loco, we can drag it from there to there. I've not changed any of the original routes or anything. At the moment, it runs onto the points. Point sensor is occupied. It arrives in the destination block. So that is cleared. The destination block is occupied. It's left the wagon behind on the points, which are still occupied. I can't change the points. All I'm doing is generating error messages down here. If I try and click and, I'll clear the screen Alt K again, so we see what happens. If I try and drag the Loco from block 3 to block 2, nothing happens. And again, if I can't deduce what it is, click on the trace button. Pages and pages and pages. Near the bottom, skip route 3 to 2 because it is not free. Switch P1 is electrically occupied. That is that sensor. So that is our problem. It takes a bit of getting used to analysing these files, but there is a lot of information there and it is well worth getting into. So we've tried to click and drag from 3 to 2, it didn't work. Up here we've got wait and then it will occasionally flash to auto. If I remove the wagon from the block, there we go, the train runs again. So if you want to stop things being left on the points, all you need to do is to add a sensor to the points and connect it up on the wiring tab. So that completes the whole of that section there. We've looked at doing a backup, modifying existing track plans, some of the options, trial and error, updating the routes, what happens if the wagon is left on the points, and how to diagnose problems if something doesn't work. So from that, any questions?
How did you say that there was a wagon actually on that section?
How did I detect that there was one there?
Because your demo just showed a single locomotive. So as soon as the locomotive cleared the points should FB1 should have gone clear.
Oh yes, sorry, I wasn't very careful with my explanation. If I'll just do it again, if the loco is actually pulling a wagon and the wagon has a resistive wheel set, so here we've got a loco, but it's also got a wagon attached to it. So we drag it to block 3. So the loco and wagon start off from block 2. They arrive on the points, so either the loco or the wagon are now on the points. The loco arrives in block 3, but the wagon has become detached on the points. So Rocrail knows the train has arrived in block 3. It doesn't know that it's left a wagon behind, only because the points are still occupied by this sensor. So it can't detect each individual wagon, it can only detect a whole train. But if part of the train is left behind, then that sensor on the points won't clear, so it won't allow any further moves across those points.
That's fine, thank you.
Okay.
Where does Rocrail originate from? Is it something to do with Loco, the manufacturer?
No, it's a chap, Rob Lewis. He's developed it himself over a number of years. I think there's a team of them now developing it. I think it's been going 15 years or more now. I've been using it for 10 or more. It's an individual guy's project. It's not like JMRI, which is open source. It is an individual guy, and I think he funds it by donations. There are some features in Rocrail that are only available if you make a donation. If you want to use a mobile phone as a throttle, for example, there's an Android app that will allow you to do that, but that's only available to you if you make a donation. So it's a sort of voluntary donation, but not totally voluntary. Also, if you don't make a donation, when you start up Rocrail, you get a screen each time, but you just click through that and it's not a problem. Everything else works normally.
I missed the name. What country has this guy come from?
He's from Germany. It's Rob Lewis.
Okay.
If you look on the Rocrail website, I think it will tell you there. I can actually, at the top of the Rocrail screen, sorry, I've clicked on the wrong thing. If you'll get stuck at any time, at the top of the Rocrail screen here is a little information button. That's the online manual. If you click on that, it takes you to the Rocrail online manual and you find everything you want there. And it'll have information about the author and everything on that in that manual.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Clearly a very complex system, which, if I may say so, you've explained extremely well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
One question is, just to clarify, the sensing, it's not actually a sensor in itself there, it's the actual fact that you've got something across the rails.
It is in this case, yes.
That's correct, yeah.
Yes, it is.
When you were clicking on the screen, you would like, in effect, simulating what could have gone on.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
precisely, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, when it's connected to a layout, and unfortunately in my railway room where I am now, my laptop runs Windows 10, but my layout runs on an old Windows 7 machine, which has a CAN USB, the original version, and Windows 10 won't talk to a CAN USB, so I can't plug this one into the other layout. But if it's connected to a layout, when the sensors are activated or the block detectors detect a current being drawn, it actually illuminates the sensor on the Rocrail screen exactly the same as it does when I simulate it.
Now that's odd because I'm using Windows 10 for development, and my system has got the standard old-fashioned USB, and it's found it no problems.
Oh right. Well, my one comes up and says driver not found, FTDI driver not found. So I copied the driver from my Windows 7 machine onto my Windows 10, and it won't play with it. So
very obvious. Mine was that I used to use for download was actually an XP machine, and very occasionally I go back to the XP machine if I've got an insoluble problem sort of thing.
right.
But normally I've just swapped the whole development setup running from Windows 10.
Right, okay. I'll have a further look at that then. Thank you.
Did you say you were using USB 3 and
It
not
was
a
the standard, the very original USB.
Right, of course, there's
USB.
a USB. There's a USB 4 now. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
USB 4 is the modern. This is the old with the plug-in USB module.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Brian, can I ask you
Yes,
Tim's
please do.
question? He's saying that on the when you click on the file menu, you can open a workspace, but further down there's an option to open a new file. He wondered what that did.
I must admit I don't really know. I've tried these various things, and open workspace, recent workspace. No, I can't find it now, but I have seen that.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is. There's also somewhere an option to save as. And here we go.
Right.
Yeah, now when I've got into difficulties before, I know I've done something wrong and I know I'm going to lose my good work because when I close Rocrail, it's going to save the complete mess that I've made. I've tried this save as button, and that gives you an option of saving the file as a different name. But all it does is it saves the current mess as whatever you call it. So I could save my mess as a complete current mess file. So that's saved it, but it carries on. You've still got your current mess on the screen. You can't get rid of it. So no, the actual open file, I can't find that. I normally use open workspace, or if you've got a recent workspace, you can find it. It's a shorter menu there.
Yeah.
But,
I must admit, I don't really understand where it is. I've just got the message.
no, okay.
But he's only just downloaded it and started playing around with it, and he's managed to do and follow what you've done before, and he's fine with that. He did say that when he opened the Rocrail workspace, he didn't have a grid showing, and he had to go to view in the top and then click on grid on. But I think you covered that in the first one, didn't you?
I don't think I don't know whether I did or not, but that's the way. There's lots of options on view.
Yeah, because you then changed the resolution of the grid, I think, as well.
Yeah, the resolution you can change. There are two things up here. Zoom to fit screen. If you click on that, it pulls it out to full screen. Or the magnifying glass gives you an option of zooming to different sizes. That's okay. And also, depending on the size of your track plan, you can increase or decrease the size of the controller window.
Yeah. Can you set these on different screens? I suppose you can do, can't you? Can you divorce the controller screen and put that on another monitor?
Don't
Or
really
does it have
know,
to stay
probably.
within?
Yeah, I don't really know on that. Also, if
Okay.
you want to, you can go to full track plan somewhere here. Yeah, so if you want to use the full track plan, the track plan for the full screen, once you've got everything up and running perfectly and you're not having to do any more adjustments, you can go full screen. I'm not going to click on that because I don't know how to get out of it. So,
okay, I've got my own questions now, Brian.
right.
Can you actually run? Can you actually run the trains randomly, or do
Yes,
you
you
have
can.
to do some kind of?
Yeah, I can actually show you a demo of that on the next video if you want to.
Okay. And presumably it doesn't matter what types of sensors. It's just whether it's a spot sensor or whether it's a current sensor or whatever.
Yes, you can use any current sensor, spot sensor, infrared sensor, through beam or reflective. They all work in exactly the same way, so it doesn't matter what the sensor is.
Can you add buttons to the track plan?
Yes, you
A sort of
can.
interactive button.
Yep. We go into track plan, edit panel, and oh no, I'll do it a different way. No, I'll do it the way I was going to. Add an item. Right, so I was clicking around because I've done it a different way in the past, but this works. So add item, so we can add a button. So we can have one of those and put it up there. When we right mouse click on it and go on properties, we could call that go. And we can give that let's go on properties again. So what we can do is assign an action to that button. Probably an easier way to do this is if I shut this Rocrail down, open up a copy of my current main plan and show you on that.
Okay.
It only takes a few seconds. If you want to ask any questions while I'm going. This is my main plan, my main layout. Let's pull that down. That's got loads of buttons all over it. These are a legacy of starting off in completely the wrong manner. Don't worry about any of these buttons. They are not really appropriate. But to start my whole system going, I just click this one button up here and that will start the goods train running. And as that gets going, the schedule that it's running calls other schedules, and I end up with absolutely everything going round all automatically. So you create a button, as I did on the last screen, and then on the properties, and I've called this button Go, by the way, there's something called actions. And I've created an action which runs a schedule. The schedule is goods fiddle yard 1 to sidings. So when I click on that button, it will start the goods train on that schedule. So there are several layers to actually getting it to work. So I've created a schedule which I've attached to an action, which I've attached to a button. So there are quite a few steps in the process, and it takes a while to learn all the individual steps. But if we want to go through a little bit more at a later date, I'd be quite happy to carry on with that.
Yeah, that's, I think Andrew wants to ask a question. Andrew?
Yeah, I've two questions, Brian. The first is, can Rocrail support modular layout structures? So could you communicate from one computer running Rocrail to another computer running Rocrail, operating a different station, and drive a train off the end of your Rocrail and onto, say, Paul's Rocrail?
I think you can. Let's just have a look. What I've done here is clicked on the Rocrail modular concept. Yeah, so this is the Rocrail online manual I'm on now. And it's telling me convert a regular plan to a modular plan. So it looks like it is possible. There's lots of instructions there which I've not read before. But if I just flick back to my Rocrail screen, so all I did there was I wanted to know something about modular. I clicked on the online manual button here at the top of the screen. That opened the online manual. At the top corner of the online manual, there's a search box. And you just type what you want in the search box, and it usually picks up answers of some sort. It can take a while to find the bit you want. A lot of it's in German. But if you find a bit that's got a suffix en on it, you'll get English, or it might even have Swedish or what else on it.
Okay, thank you. And the second question is whether Rocrail train operations can support complex logic. The example that I'm thinking of is a train with an uncoupling magnet with a sensor either side of it spaced at a precise distance, and every vehicle has a white dot, a precise distance in from the coupling of that wagon. So
Right.
if you push the train over the coupling and two wagons are both triggering their sensor, then you know the coupling is exactly over the magnet and will operate. So
Right.
could you drive a train over a magnet and say, stop this train on the third time you get both sensors activated, i.e. get it to the point where it will uncouple the third wagon in?
Right. This is beyond my basic knowledge. I suspect it can be done. I know that Rocrail can wait for certain scenarios or you can put conditions on an action so that something won't happen until two or more parameters are in the correct state. That will definitely work. So we could definitely say that the uncoupler won't actuate until both white dots are detected. If you want to detect that for the third time, I suspect you can do that with a script. Rocrail does support scripting, and there's quite a bit of information on doing that. But I personally have never tried it, so I don't really know whether it can be done.
Okay, thank you.
Ryan, have you ever found that there's something you've wanted to do that you definitely can't do with Rocrail?
Not so far, no. I've usually found ways around doing things. No, there's so far nothing, no.
So it's all just a case of learning the right way of getting something done.
Yes.
Then? Yeah.
I don't know how we're doing for time. If there are more questions, carry on. But I've got a couple of short possible presentations. One is the question about running automatic. I've got a short video of that on my London transport layout, and then uncoupling. That could become a bigger subject, maybe for another time, or a quick look at it to start with.
You go for the layout demonstration.
Right. Okay.
We'll see where we are for time there.
Right. So the layout that I have is this one here. Just pull that down a little bit. That'll do. So this is my London, well, it's District line, which runs partly underground. There's a terminal station, 2 terminal stations at each end. So this is exactly where I started. The demo layout that we've been doing is exactly these 2, a set of points, and I did have another block here. So 2 terminus stations there, 2 termini at the other end, an intermediate station with 2 platforms, and a lower single block. And just a quick look at how these have been set up. The terminal stations are the same as the ones that we've used on the demo layout. In my early days, I was using 2 sensors, and I haven't gone to change that. So this is pretty well standard Rocrail stuff, using 2 sensors. So when the train arrives at the first one, it's an enter sensor. So Rocrail decelerates the train. It keeps going slowly until it hits the second sensor, and that is the in sensor, and the train stops. So that's a terminal station. The intermediate stations, the properties for those are the same as the terminal station, but it's not marked as a terminal station. You make sure that's not checked. It did have allow change of direction, but I've unchecked that because when the train comes from this direction, it's only allowed to go into this platform. It's not allowed to go into that platform. I deleted the route that goes from platform 1 to platform 2 down there. So the trains can only go into platform 1. They can't reverse. So once they've stopped and done their 10-second wait in platform 1, they go on in this direction. When they get to this block, this again is not a terminal station, so that's greyed out. But in this case, I have allowed change of direction, but I've also unchecked wait, so the train normally wouldn't stop in that block. If it's coming from the station here, provided there's a free terminus station or terminal platform, it will run straight through that block to the terminus. However, if the terminus is occupied, when it gets into this block, it realizes it can't go any further in that direction, and it'll automatically reverse and go back the other way. And in this case, it's only allowed to go into platform 2. So this runs totally automatically in random mode. There are no schedules. We just click on to start a loco. You just double click on it when the power and automatic are switched on, and it does everything for itself. So we'll start a video. So this is it. This is the Wimbledon top station. The train sat on the side there. The signal was red, it's changed to green. Rocrail did that. 3 seconds later, the train sets off and it's headed underground. We move down to the underground section, and here's the train coming into the station, automatically slows down and stops at the sensor track. It's going to sit there for 10 seconds. And now it heads off for the next block. So it's found the single track block, but beyond that, the terminal station, which we're going to now, is fully occupied. There are 2 trains in there. So that train over the back there can't go any further, so it slows down and stops on the single track. And here it is underneath on the single track. So it all reverses, and it's now running into the platform 2 of the intermediate station, and it comes into there and stops at the appropriate place. The platform starter signal is red. When Rocrail sets the route to the next station, it automatically changes the signal to green. 3 seconds later, the train starts off. As it triggers a sensor going up the hill there, the signal goes back to red. And the train comes back into the above ground platform. While it's there, I'm starting up a second train now, double clicking on it to start one from the lower terminus. So we've now got 2 trains running automatically at random. So that one's set off from there. The other one's going again from there. And on this occasion, they're both coming into the lower intermediate platform together. Do their 10-second wait. And they're going to head off pretty well simultaneously. But because the timings at the upper and lower termini are random, the actual movements of the trains become quite random. The waiting time at the top here is anywhere between about 15 and 55 seconds. I think the third train has now been started. So sometimes you'll end up with 2 trains at the top, sometimes none. And the single track here, because it's clear in both directions, the train runs straight through. So this part of the layout just runs all the time, automatically, random mode, and just does it all by itself. The rest of the layout runs to schedules. That one has waited more than 10 seconds because there's a train coming the other way from the lower terminus. I was sitting there like a dummy waiting for it and then realised what was going on. And so that was that other train that had been waiting has come up to the surface. So we've now got 2 there, and as soon as the track is clear, the other one sets off the other way. So that's all running by itself. Right, so yeah, so that was the layout in operation. Any questions about that or anything else?
But Neil's got a question.
Mhm.
Yeah, right from the first talk you gave, I was a bit concerned that the point state is the commanded state and not the actual state. Is it impossible to make the graphic follow a state switch or sensor on the actual point or on the driver?
I'm not quite with you. Do you mean the actual, the on-screen?
Yeah, on screen, when you change the point, it's when you actually clicked the point, it changes state, but that's the commanded state.
Yes.
And it's not the actual state, because if the link failed in some way, the point
yeah.
would be in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I don't have any feedback from the points to the command station telling me that the points have actually changed.
But can it be done?
It can, yes. You can.
Oh, right. Okay.
You've got detectors on your points. Say you're detecting the state of the microswitch, then you can add that feedback to the layout to confirm that it has changed. Yes.
Okay. That was my only concern, that it wasn't possible.
Oh no.
Because to me that's fundamental.
Oh right. Okay. Yeah. No, perhaps I've been lucky. I've never needed to do that, and I've never had problems with points not changing. So.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Okay.
Does Peter Giles want to ask his question?
Yeah, I'm right at the beginning of automation. Is sort of, I don't know how many years away from me, but so it would seem to me if I wanted to learn Rocrail, it'd be handy to be able to build a track plan and then literally run it virtually without all the electrical connections. Is that possible?
Yes, it is. Yes. Yeah,
Oh,
you
great.
can. You can build a track plan and test it fully without having any. You don't even have to have a layout at all. No.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Andrew, did you have another question, or because I've only just seen the message from yourself?
No, that was earlier. But I would like to ask: does Rocrail do traverses and turntable fiddle yards?
Yes, it does. See if we can find them. Sorry, let's turn all that off. Track plan, edit panel. I think they're under switches. I'll have a look. I know it does them. I had some on the screen not very long ago when I was playing around with something else. You see what I mean by trial and error when I'm doing this. I've definitely seen a traverser because I didn't know what it was. It looked like a shove halfpenny table. Oh, here we go. So that is a traverser. I don't know how it works. I've never tried, and that is a turntable.
Does it have properties to allow it to be more than one track wide? Because both ones that you've got on display there are single track across.
Yep.
Like if you're having a fiddle yard traverser with 6 tracks.
Yes, I'm looking at this for the very first time. Yeah, without looking at the manual, I don't think I'll be able to. Oh, what's it got here? Tracks? No. I don't know what 5 this is. Let's try 8 and see. No, I honestly don't know how it works, but it does allow them. And similarly with the turntable, it should give us an option of how many tracks we have. This is interesting because, well, it is to me. The properties for a turntable are exactly the same as those for a traverser. One goes round in circles and one goes up and down. Yeah, I don't really know how they work, having never used them, but Rocrail definitely does do traversers and turntables, yes.
We mentioned last week, sorry, a fortnight ago, that this appears to get something up and running quickly with a diagram, etc. It seems to be a lot easier than using JMRI. Have you ever tried JMRI?
Yes, in
Brian?
my early days of Rocrail, before I knew how to recover plans and get things from backup, I made a complete hash of several well-developed layouts, and I just could not recover them. And I thought, this is a complete waste of time. I'll dump this and go to JMRI. So I tried, but I just could not get my head around JMRI at all. Probably didn't give it enough time. So I went back and started again in Rocrail, and I've stayed with that ever since. So it's admitting defeat, really.
It does help doing one. I don't forget how many courses Pete runs, but I've been on 2. I think there's a third one. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, it does help being on a course, and in fact, it helps here. Looking at Rocrail with you going through it and demonstrating it, it gives everybody the ability to. I mean, I know there's quite a few people have gone away, downloaded it, and played around with it, which is
yeah. I think that's the only way to learn any of this software is to try something really simple to start with and play around with it until you get the hang of it.
Yeah. Okay, well, it's about 12:30 now, Brian. We're not really going to be able to do the uncoupling. I know that a couple of other people have got uncoupling demonstrations they could do, like James, who's recently posted on a forum, and someone else who's contacted me. So it might be an advantage to do the uncoupling at the May meeting.
Right.
I don't know whether that'll be in 2 weeks' time or 3 weeks' time or whatever, but I'll try and set that up if that's okay. Yours is, you said you needed about 10 minutes plus 10 minutes, is that right?
Yes, I would think 20 minutes, yes.
Yeah. So
Paul, a general meeting on uncoupling and coupling, I think would be an extremely interesting session.
Oh yeah. And there's many ways of doing it. I think we're probably looking at more than one session, Roger, to be honest. And the other thing is looking at the different hardware that you can apply to it, because it would be good if people have got things like the Gauge Master uncoupler for tension lock, the Caddy system that James has been using and displaying on his videos, etc. And I know that there are other systems which just use representative type couplings with just bits of wire that float backwards and forwards. So yeah, if anyone has any reasonable coupling demonstration that they can do, or equipment that they can demonstrate, or advise us on, then let me know and I'll try and fit in, if not one, but a series of main meetings on coupling and uncoupling.
I work on use N-Gauge. I'd be particularly interested in a reliable method of coupling and uncoupling with minimum alterations to the actual rolling stock.
Yeah, well, that's James has done that, hasn't he? So
yes.
Roger, have you seen James's latest posting with his video?
I don't think I have.
If you look under active topics, maybe you'll see it. He only posted it yesterday or the day before. I can't remember. But it's quite an extensive. It's an interesting. That's Engage. So.
Well, in the digest, I'll double check on that.
Yeah, yeah. So it's worth going to look at the video. It's quite impressive. Okay then, chaps. Brian, thanks very much. It's been most entertaining, most enlightening, and I'm sure that these two videos at least are going to help anybody looking at Rocrail as to realise that they can use it with CBus and it integrates with Mode quite well. So maybe sometime in the future we can have a more advanced session if you've got more advanced in what you're doing.
Yes, certainly, yes.
You just have to fit a traverser and a turntable. Just find an excuse for extending the layout.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so we'll call that an end then. Thank you very much, Brian, and
Okay,
and look out for the next meeting, probably in 2 to 3 weeks. I'll contact you direct, Brian, if
Right,
with the dates and things. Okay.
yes.
Bye, chaps.
Very much. Thanks very much, Paul.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks very much,
Very
Brian.
good.
Really
Welcome.